Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And we have a special guest with us here on the State of the Saints podcast. I'm pretty sure some of you probably heard his voice given the Sprite scoreboard after every single game. And now he's filling in temporarily on WWL with Bobby Hebert for the point after. We have Mark Menard. What's going on, Mark?
Oh, man, happy to be here. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great, man. I'm excited. Talk about Saints football. A little chilly outside. We talked about it a little bit off the air. So how's the weather out there? You know, it's cold here. So is it cold over there?
Oh, we got a little cold snap going on over here. We got about 43 degrees this morning, and you know our first little chill of the winter time, starting to feel a little bit like the holiday season. So nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely, yeah. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, and it's beginning to look a lot like the playoffs. You know, so as teams start to make that final bid to try to get playoff positioning, the Saints, as of right now, are the number one seed in NFC, and you'll be hard-pressed to find a team that's playing better football than the New Orleans Saints, Mark. But that's my first question to you. Overall, you look at this Saints team at the beginning of the season, I mean, it was some defensive issues, especially in the secondary, giving up big plays. And now we fast forward going into Week 13, the Saints have the number one defense in football. Mark, what has been the key to the success and the turnaround of the Saints defense?
You know, there's a number of things involved in that. Obviously, you know, the defensive line has been, you know, eaten. they've been eaten. You know, playing. I don't know how much playing Atlanta had to do with helping them get on track, because it seems like anytime they get Matt Ryan in their sights, they go to work. But that defensive line has been a monster, and you know, we didn't see a lot of sacks against Denver, but they also didn't throw a lot of passes.
Yes.
So they didn't have a quarterback. And one of the numbers that we kind of unearthed right after the game was that, you know, they dropped back on 9 passes, and Cam Jordan had 1 sack and 4 hurries. So over half the time, that poor guy was looking at Cam Jordan right in his face while he's trying to throw a ball that he hadn't thrown a ball since the freshman year of college.
Yeah,
and he's got 94 breathing down his neck. But so it's got to start with the defensive line. David Onyemata has been having himself a season.
Yeah,
and it's amazing when you think that this guy didn't play football until college. You know, he didn't even know what football was. They had to teach him how to get in a 3-point stance in college. And that was like the whole first year of his college career, was just learning how to get in a stance and learning how to play. Yeah. And now, I mean, he plays like he's one of the best defensive tackles in the league, week in and week out. Trey Hendrickson has emerged as you know, he's one of the sack leaders in the NFL, and everybody's like, "Who's Trey Hendrickson?
Exactly.
Where did he come from?" You know, so, but you know, he had a couple of injury-plagued years here to start off, and now he's finally healthy and he's getting it rolling. Marcus Davenport, since he got back from injury, has gotten it rolling. So that defensive line is doing work. And then the trade for Quan Alexander has been huge. Yeah. You know, he looks like he pairs much better with Demario Davis than Alex Anzalone did, and it's not a knock on Anzalone. Alexander's just that much better of a player. Yeah. And he's actually a guy that, you know, when he was available as a free agent, I had hoped the Saints would sign him, and it didn't work out. He ended up going to San Francisco. Right. They end up getting their man in the end anyway. Yeah. I don't know what it was about the Niners scheme where it wasn't working out for him, but man, he fits like a glove here. Yeah. And then the secondary has really, you know, picked up its game as well. And, you know, you had a couple weeks there where Marshawn Lattimore was hurt, Janoris Jenkins was hurt, and now you kind of got everybody healthy back there. Gardner Johnson's doing his job again. Malcolm Jenkins has kind of found his role in this defense after you know, coming back this offseason. So it's all really just kind of starting to gel. And look, the proof's in the pudding. Number one defense in the NFL for the first time under Sean Payton. You know, this hadn't happened here in a long time. It's been, you know, the Dome Patrol days was the last time we had a defense ranked number one here. Yeah. And one more thing I want to say before I move on from Quan Alexander, and this is an observation that my coworker Zach Streif made. First game, you know, in the lineup, he's already got like 15 separate handshakes with all the dudes on the defense. So he's integrated himself very quickly. Everybody's got their own handshake with Quan Alexander. He's been here 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean, but he brings like a different type of like flavor and a different type of energy to this defense. I mean, I think Sean Payton said in a press conference, it's like he's been here for like 8 weeks already. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, he's only played in maybe like 3 games with the New Orleans Saints since he's been here. And also, Mark, if you think about it, like they basically got him for nothing. I mean, they ended up trading Kiko Alonso, but the 49ers. They released him. You know? So you got Quan Alexander, you got that type of production for absolutely nothing. Like when you think about it, that's incredible. But I mean,
if you think about it, there's the 49ers released him. The Saints were probably going to release him too. That's why they traded him. Yep. So it's like, well, let's put a feeler out there, see what we can get for him.
Right.
And they got a difference maker.
Yeah, I'm glad they did. I'm glad they got that because. Even if you look at the defense, I mean, Demario Davis, he's emerging to me as the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. And you see a difference in the way that he plays since Quan Alexander's been there. You see him like flying all over the field. And I don't think he has to, it doesn't require him to like do so many different things that he would be doing if Alex Anzalone was out there. But the Saints defense, I don't want to hear anything about the quarterbacks. Not being there in Denver. I mean, the reason why they're the number 1 defense, I mean, they have been dominating for the last couple of weeks. Only 1 touchdown in the last 4 games. So, I mean, this is incredible that the defense is playing like this. So I'm looking forward to seeing them move on and trend in the right direction. But let's go ahead and talk. Go ahead, Mark.
Before we move on from that, the only difference that no quarterbacks made in Denver, honestly, was on the Saints offense. Yeah. We saw Sean Payton with the most vanilla, conservative play calling we've ever seen out of Sean Payton in a game. That's not in the preseason. And he was able to do that because it was just a matter of don't beat yourself. This is one of those games where if you overthink it and then you beat yourself. And so just, any criticism that Taysom Hill got for this game is moot. Because it was like, just don't throw the ball away. Don't give them – the only way they're going to stay in the game is if you give them turnovers. Yeah. So just keep the ball – keep ball security, run the ball, play defense like you can play it, and you're going to get out of here with an easy win, and that's what it was. And, I've never seen – like if you look at the Saints fan base on Twitter and the ones that call us over at the radio station, I've never seen so much anger over a 28-point win. It's nuts. What are you doing? Just this was one where you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Exactly. Just go out there, don't turn the ball over, and you're going to stop them on defense because your defense has been playing lights out against teams with quarterbacks. So it's just amazing to me that people were down on this win and they won 31-3.
Yeah. I don't understand it either. I don't understand why people like nitpicking with it. I mean, it was the game plan. If you're running the football, and limited the mistakes, like you said, you're going to come out of there successful. I think people are just upset. They want to see excitement in their football games. Watching that throwback, that Vince Lombardi versus Paul Brown type football game. When you're running the football, I don't think people like that. But like I said, a win is a win. But
people right now are hung up on seeing that Taysom Hill is the heir apparent.
Yeah,
and seeing that Taysom Hill is the next quarterback for the Saints. You know what I want to see? I want to see the Super Bowl this year. Yep. I don't care. I'm not really worried about what's going to happen when Drew Brees retires, if he retires next year. I want a Super Bowl this year while Drew Brees is still in the lineup, and because he's going to come back. And he's going to be back for the playoffs, and hopefully those ribs will be all healed up. And it's one of those things where it's just going to take a little bit of time, and there's not really you can do about it, and you can't rehab it. Just got to let him rest, and he'll be back, in time for a postseason run. And I'm not that concerned about what Taysom Hill looks like in the Saints offense as long as they keep winning. Just go win the game.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think that it should be too much of an issue because – regardless, I mean, it's not like he's going to start for the rest of the season. We know for a fact number 9 is coming back. So, I mean, just hold the ship, make sure that you don't run into an iceberg or anything like that, and just make sure that you stay in the water and you're okay. But, I mean, let's go ahead and talk about Taysom Hill for a second. I mean, people talking about his 9 of 16, 78 yards. They talk about some of the decision-making, him holding the football too long, opportunities that presented itself he didn't take advantage of. Do you think that Taysom Hill is playing a tad bit afraid of making a mistake and possibly costing his team issues? Do you think that's in the back of his head?
It could be. It could be that maybe he doesn't trust his arm as much as another pro quarterback would. And look, in practice, he hasn't been super accurate. He's been okay.
Right.
He's but throwing the ball is not his strong suit. His strong suit is what he can do with his legs. And he I don't know how much you can improve accuracy once you get to the pro level.
Right.
We I don't know if you remember, but last year Sean Payton kind of compared him to Steve Young.
Right.
And the way that Steve Young could run the ball and throw it. Well, that I work with Bobby Hebert. And so so Bobby, we called up Steve Young because Bobby knows Steve Young.
Yeah.
And we got Steve Young on the show. and he said, he was flattered basically by somebody, invoking his name, but the place that they're separating is accuracy. And what he said was, if you got a quarterback who's like at a C+ throwing the ball, you can maybe, once you get to the pros, and the most you can get him to is like a B-. You're not going to make him an A. Not by the time he's 30 years old. He's not. He's just not going to get there. So, what we've seen from Drew Brees is a whole different ball game from what we would ever see from Taysom Hill. Yeah. So judging him on those criteria, he's doing what he does.
Yeah.
And I think that he does. Maybe he doesn't trust his arm as much as. I don't know if it's as much as he should, but maybe he trusts it the right amount. Maybe he knows what he's capable of. One of the weirdest stats that came out of preparing for last week's game was that Kendall Hinton's last touchdown pass was more recent than Taysom Hill's last touchdown pass. He hadn't thrown one since 2016. So he runs it in all the time. He calls his own number and gets in the end zone. Right. And in the end, that's what you want. You want the touchdown. Right. And however you got to get it, you get it. Yeah. But I don't know if Taysom Hill's ever going to be, an all-pro type passer. I don't know if he's even going to be a Cam Newton type passer. I think he could maybe get to that level. Cam's not super accurate, but he's got kind of a cannon. Right. Obviously Cam looks a little different this season, but I'm talking about, prime Cam Newton. Yeah. Maybe Taysom Hill could get to that because look, he's got an arm. He can throw the ball down the field. Right. It's just a matter of, can he hit the target? Yeah. And I think what you're seeing from Taysom Hill as he fills in, now he's been in there a couple of games, and teams, have got a bit of game film on him, and they can see, what his tendencies are. Right. And we're seeing a lot of what we saw last year with Teddy Bridgewater, where you're not really seeing the ball spread around a lot. You're seeing the ball go to can't guard Mike quite a bit. But
could it be worse?
Teddy was hitting Mike Thomas, and Taysom is a little bit off, and Mike can't quite bring those balls in the way he did with Teddy, because Teddy's a little bit more of an accurate quarterback. He's a little bit more of a pocket quarterback. Yeah. And so, I think, Taysom's going to have to get that ball a little bit closer to the receivers, but that's not ever going to be his strong suit, I don't think. And maybe he'll prove me wrong 3-4 years down the line. But right now, he's doing it the way that he knows how to do it. And that's all that the Saints are asking him to do, because they just want him to keep that ship on course. Keep that ship on course. Exactly. And keep rolling. And if you could rack up, all these wins while Drew's out, that's even more gravy on the mashed potatoes, basically. Yeah. But I fully expect them to drop a game at least. I think you'd be foolish to say, they're going to win them all without Drew. Now the good thing is it lined up with a really soft part of their schedule with Drew being out. True. And it's possible. It's not impossible that they could, win all these, and they might. But this game against Atlanta this week is not going to be. The Falcons are not going to be an easy out. Yeah. And I don't think we can go in expecting to see the dominant performance we saw just 2 weeks ago, even. Right. Because they're going to learn from that game, and they're a prideful team. And under Raheem Morris, they've done better. They're 4-2. They're 4-2 they're 4-7 on the year. They were 0-5 under Dan Quinn, and now they're 4-2 under Raheem Morris. Yeah. And it's crazy because Raheem didn't have a great tenure in Tampa Bay, but right now he's exactly what the Falcons need, and he's kind of got them, pointed in the right direction. Yeah. This is going to be an interesting game this Sunday.
Yeah, I just think with Taysom Hill, I feel like this. They always say, like, you never want to be the man after the man. You want to be the man after the man after the man. You know, like you never want to be that guy, because I feel like the Saints fan base, the Who Dat Nation, like, we compare everybody to Drew Brees. Like, any performance that we see from a quarterback that's a backup quarterback of the New Orleans Saints, we think about Drew in that situation. 3rd and 7, it's incomplete. It goes over a wide receiver's head. Drew wouldn't have made that play. And we can't suspend our imagination or even come to the conclusion, like, this guy's not Drew Brees. And I feel like any quarterback that comes in, Mark, whether he's in the building now or the Saints get someone in free agency, you're not going to see that type of production. I mean, Drew Brees is an all-time leading passer. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and he's there for a reason. And I feel like Saints fans, they compare everybody to him. And I feel like that's the reason why we end up getting disappointed when the guy doesn't pan out to be Drew Brees. Well, there's so many other quarterbacks that came to that are in the league and they played before, and they have never been like Drew Brees. So I think that we just need to, realize that Taysom is not Drew Brees. But let me ask you.
Let me speak on that for just a second. We need to really appreciate Drew Brees for whatever time he's got left. Yeah. Because chances are you're not going to see another Drew Brees in New Orleans, because you may not see another Drew Brees in the league.
Yep.
And you talk about, you don't want to be the man that comes next. You want to be the man after the man. Yeah. If you look at the Miami Dolphins, they're about 10 men deep, and they still ain't found a man to follow Dan Marino.
Exactly.
And they're hoping Tua Tagovailoa can do it. Yep. But they've been searching for 20 years for Dan Marino's replacement, and they haven't found it yet. So this is the golden age right now of Saints football, as long as number 9's strapping it on. Yep. So I don't know how much time he's got left. I don't, he could be done after this year. And my gut, I have no insider information. I don't know Drew Brees. I don't talk to Drew Brees, but my gut just kind of tells me, with as much time as it took him to decide to come back this year, I think this might be the last year.
Yeah, I agree.
And especially after this injury, man, cracked ribs and a collapsed lung.
Yeah,
that is some serious business right there. And I don't blame the guy if he's sitting at home right now thinking, man, why did I come back? But look, Drew's a competitor, and he the one thing you can guarantee is if he comes back, he's in it to win it. You're going to get 110% of Drew Brees. No matter what he's doing, if he decides he's going to do something. And so if he does come back next year, you'll get 110% of Drew Brees. But I think if he don't feel he can give that 110%, he's going to walk away. And we already know he's got a deal on the table already. Yeah. He's going to join NBC when his career's over and have a nice little broadcasting job where he can be with his family during the week, just fly out on the weekends and cover football games and fly back. And he's got that waiting for him. So I think retirement might be looking a little more like what he wants nowadays, because I don't think he signs that deal if he's thinking about coming back for 2-3 more years.
Yep, good point. I mean, Drew Brees, if he's thinking or contemplating, retirement, I mean, like I said, it's well within his right, and if he's not, then I'm pretty sure Brittany is thinking about it for him. You don't want to see your husband, being in that type of condition, especially when you have 4 small children.
Here's a little fun fact. I'm exactly 1 week older than Drew Brees. Wow. I know how I feel getting up in the morning with my unathletic ass. So I can totally see how Drew must be feeling when, after he takes that pounding every Sunday. And it as you get older, it gets a little bit harder and a little bit harder and a little bit harder. And my hat's off to the guy, because I don't know how he does it. I know obviously I'm not in good shape, but I don't know if I would have lasted nearly as long in the NFL as Drew Brees has, because he is a warrior out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he definitely is a warrior. I mean, he's given us so many great moments in the Who Dat Nation, and hopefully he'll continue, this season to give us some great moments, the moment that we want, which is raising the Lombardi Trophy and being Super Bowl champions. But Mark, let me go ahead. I like a good conspiracy theory. I like a good conspiracy theory.
Who doesn't?
I follow the the JFK assassination and stuff like that. I'm always wondering, like, was there somebody else?
Man, look, when I met my wife in college, one of the first things we bonded on was we were both huge X-Files fans.
Oh,
so you're talking to the right person when we're talking conspiracy theories. What you got?
Okay, look. So this is what I'm thinking. All right, last year the Saints they signed Teddy Bridgewater, and Teddy Bridgewater had opportunity to go be a starting quarterback in Miami, but he ended up coming back to the Saints, and that would have been his second straight year with the New Orleans Saints. And I feel like the Saints really didn't want Teddy Bridgewater to play. They probably thought Drew Brees would play out the season. And you already alluded to Drew Brees signing that contract with NBC, so maybe he was thinking about retiring after last year, and Teddy Bridgewater would have, got into that spot. But what happened was they didn't expect Drew Brees to get hurt. Teddy Bridgewater comes out there, wins 5 straight games, and he puts this body of work together that a team can look at and say, hey, Teddy won 5 games for the New Orleans Saints. And it cost them opportunity to make Teddy Bridgewater the successor to Drew Brees. So this is my conspiracy theory. Do you think that the Saints know that they fixed the issues with Jameis Winston, but they want to hide Jameis Winston because it can be possible that he becomes the successor to Drew Brees, and they don't want any other team to see what he has? Do you think that may be the reason why Sean Payton went with Taysom instead of Jameis?
Sean Payton is the king of stashing talent. He knows how to hide guys, and he knows how to find guys that you hid and go get them. That's how we got Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill was on the practice squad in Green Bay, and Sean saw him and said, you know what? We're going to put that guy on our active roster and swipe him. And they did. Right. And then he went about, turning him into this new type of weapon that nobody's ever seen before in the NFL. Right. So he knows how to go and find the guys that you hid, and he knows how to hide guys from you. Yeah. So I don't think that's too far-fetched. Look, we know Jameis can play. The problem with Jameis is his decision-making. Right. And we know that Jameis came to New Orleans on a pretty much a minimum contract, right? Because he wanted to go to the Harvard of quarterbacks. He wanted to learn under Drew Brees. Right. He wanted to learn under Sean Payton. And look, there's probably some things he could take from Taysom Hill, to tell you the truth. And so, that quarterback room is about as good as it gets in the NFL. And when you can walk into that, that's certainly a place where you can add to your knowledge. Right. We also know Jameis had LASIK surgery in the offseason. So we don't know how bad his eyesight was. But one of my favorite jokes to come out of the offseason was Jameis got LASIK just in time to see Tampa sign Tom Brady. But, how much better is his passing going to be now that he can see better? We don't know. Look, I didn't get to go to any practices this offseason because obviously COVID had everything locked down tight. And usually I would get to make a few in the summer, but they kind of had a very limited scope of who they were allowing in. Bobby Hebert got to go from our station, and that was pretty much it, I think. I don't know if anybody else got to attend. Right. So I'm going by what he saw. And he said, if you put the three together, Drew Brees is obviously head and shoulders above both Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. Right. Now, it gets a little iffier when you compare Jameis and Taysom. The other thing about Jameis is, he's only been here since the spring. All right. They didn't have OTAs because of COVID. They didn't have mini camps because of COVID. They had all these virtual meetings, so he didn't really get to have a ton of chemistry, built with the receivers on the Saints. Right. And then they got to training camp and it was very limited there. And if you're not the starter, you ain't going to get a ton of snaps, especially once the season starts. Right. So, Jameis is in a position where he hasn't really had a lot of time on task with this team. Good point. I think that, to me, that is more the issue of playing Taysom Hill over Jameis Winston, is because Taysom has been here for years and he knows the offense. He knows what Sean Payton's going to ask him to do. I think Jameis would be in a little bit of an unfair position to get thrown in this type of a season and have to, suddenly start. And look, I'm not saying he couldn't. Mm-hmm. Obviously, guys, it happens in the NFL, and you had a guy in Denver that was on a practice squad receiver that had to go start a game this week. And there's been a lot more hardship than what Jameis would be undergoing if he was the starter. But I think if you take a look at the knowledge of the offense, Taysom is obviously going to be light years ahead. When Teddy Bridgewater took over last year, he'd already been in the system a year and a half.
Right.
It wasn't the first season with the Saints. It was his second season with the Saints.
Right.
And that allowed him to kind of really dig into the playbook. And it also allowed the team to really have a lot of information about what he does well.
Right.
And one of Sean Payton's biggest strengths is taking guys and putting them in a position where they do what they do well. And they put that on the field. They don't try to fit a square peg into a round hole. Yeah. They take a guy and they utilize his talents. They try to hide weaknesses. I think a lot of times across all sports, you have coaches who have a system. And, this is my system right here.
Right.
And you have to fit into my system. And no matter who, no matter what player they got, no matter who's there when they get there, no matter what guys they bring in, it's always you have to fit here. And with Sean, he's smart enough on offense where, he's forgotten more offense than either of us are ever going to know.
Right.
And he knows enough concepts where he can make a system fit the player. The player doesn't have to fit the system.
Yeah.
And so he knows that he can take Taysom and he can build a system on offense where Taysom can succeed.
Right.
And then Taysom just has to go out there and do it. Yep. And so you're not – that gets back to his passing. You're not going to see a ton of passing from Taysom Hill because Sean's going to have him doing what he does best. Yeah. And what he does best is pull the ball down and run with it or throw a little short – a quick slant or a screen pass or something like that, a run pass option, one of those type of plays, and maybe let him air it out down the field once or twice.
Right.
But I don't like I said before, I don't know that Taysom's all that comfortable with that. And when you look at Jameis, I don't know that he's had enough time with Jameis to fully evaluate, what he does well. And you also have to call into question his decision making because that's where he's faltered in the NFL. He threw for 5,000 yards last year, but he threw for 30 interceptions and 30 touchdowns.
I mean, so Mark, let me ask you this though. Like, think about this though. Okay, I have a statement about Taysom, and then I want to say something about James. All right, so let's just go ahead and just wrap this Taysom topic up. Do you think that Saints fans need to evaluate Taysom based on the game that he played against Denver? I'm talking about some of the passes that he made. Do you think that we need to put that in our mind about, the type of quarterback that he is? Do we need to hold him accountable for his performance? Or should we give him a pass because of you heard him say, they scratched the entire offensive scheme that they had after they found out the three quarterbacks were not playing. And should we evaluate him? That's my first question to you.
I trust what Sean Payton said after the game, which is, Taysom did exactly what I told him to do. Right. And so if you're going to evaluate him on the fact that he can follow orders. He's not going to go off script. He's going to do what the coach says. And, you're going into a game against a team without a quarterback, essentially, all you got to do is not beat yourself. Right. Just don't beat yourself. And that's why we saw the most conservative, vanilla offensive plan we've seen out of Sean Payton in a game that's not in the preseason because he's not going to show anything he doesn't have to. And he knew going into that game, just like anybody could have read the tea leaves on this game. Yeah. With the way the Saints defense is playing, just go out there and just methodically pound the ball down the field. I said when they scored the second touchdown, that's going to be all they need.
Yeah, it's over.
And sure enough, they didn't even do the second one. They just needed the first one.
Exactly.
So they didn't have to do a lot in this game, and they still won by 28 points.
Yeah.
So obviously the offense did plenty to get a win in this game, and I think that's all it was. Maybe you can evaluate Taysom on some of the games going forward, and we'll see what the game plan looks like going forward. I thought he played well in the game, in the game before Denver. Right. And I think he did what he was asked to do in this game.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, I said it, I don't think that we need to evaluate him based on this game. I mean, if you want to talk about some of the passes in double coverage or some of the decisions not to throw the ball, fine. But not overall his overall body of work. But back to Jameis, okay? Now, I got to ask you this. I know about, everybody joke about the 30 for 30, right? 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. But how bad does it look now that we're watching arguably the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady be second in the league in interceptions? And if you think about Bruce Arians as a head coach, every quarterback that he has coached or he has been a head coach of has had a high rate of interceptions. Like Tom Brady right now, like I said, second in the league. You think about Carson Palmer, he had a high interception rate. You think about Big Ben Roethlisberger had a high interception rate. So, I mean, you think about, all of these different players that he coached, all of them seem to have issues. And when you agree that Jameis Winston is looking better and better by the week, every time Bruce Arians goes out there with a game plan and Tom Brady goes out there and throw interceptions and there's not a running game, do you think that Jameis is starting to win back some credibility as a quarterback? Well,
first of all, I'm glad you didn't say it because if I have to hear the term "no risk it, no biscuit" one more time
I'm
this
over
season,
I'm
done. It was cute the first 20 times, and now I'm done. But I get the point of it. Bruce Arians likes to air the ball out and gamble a little bit.
Right.
And I think looking back on it now, especially when you lay it out the way you laid it out,
right.
It was probably a little bit unfair for Arians to put Jameis in that position in a contract year.
Right.
When he was trying to play for his career in Tampa as a starter.
Yeah.
And if that's the offense that you're being asked to run and you're being told, just fling it, just go out there and fling it, then and then you're gonna be held accountable for the mistakes because from what your coach told you to do. That's a little bit unfair.
Right.
And you have to believe, when the Saints were pounding the Buccaneers 38-3, right, that Jameis was standing on the Saints sideline saying, "Well, I could have done that.
Yep,
I could have given you that, Tampa. I could have at least done that." So, yeah, look, I think there's a lot of frustration right now between Tom Brady and Bruce Arians, and that's the rumors that we hear out of Tampa. Obviously, I don't have any inside info on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I mean, all the signs are kind of pointing to a rift there where they're not getting along, and that's the game that Bruce Arians likes to coach is not the game that Tom Brady likes to play.
Yeah,
and part of that's on Tom because he had to know when he signed there that this is what he's getting signed up for. Bruce Arians is not a young coach in this league. We've got a lot of tape on what a Bruce Arians team looks like on offense.
Good point.
And so Tom should have known what he was getting into. But, he's got to be looking at it like, this is way different from New England.
Right.
Because he's used to one particular system and one particular coach. And, we've been hearing for years how there was a rift between Brady and Belichick. Yeah. And I guess he finally decided, I've been giving these guys a hometown discount for years. Mm-hmm. I want to get paid. Mm-hmm. I want to show that I can do it without Bill. Well, here we are. Now this is what it's like without Bill Belichick. This is what it's like when you're the man. Yeah. And I'm not saying Tom Brady hadn't been the man, but now he's getting the paycheck and he's being asked to perform at a rate that maybe he is not able to hit consistently now that he's 43 years old.
Right.
And there's a ton of weapons in Tampa, but it's not something about it's not clicking. And part of it is probably Arians' system is just not as comfortable for Brady. Look, what happened this week against Kansas City? They played a close ball game. And what did Tom Brady do? He hit Gronkowski with a ton of passes.
Yep.
That's what he wants to do. He wants that dink and dunk short game where he can move the ball down the field, but he's not being asked to throw a bomb that maybe he's not as accurate on as he used to be.
Yeah.
And we know Tom used to be able to throw the bomb because he threw to Randy Moss and set records. And that was a part of his game at one point. But look, Father Time comes for everybody.
Yeah.
And, at 43, it's impressive that he's even out there doing it at all.
That's true.
But look, this is not the game that Tom should be playing right now, I don't think.
Yeah.
And Bruce Arians is what we talked about, one of those guys where I've got a system and you're going to play in it. Well, he's forcing Tom to play in a system that maybe Tom is not suited for at this point in his career.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where every player, if they play long enough, is going to get into an uncomfortable situation where their body doesn't match what their mind wants them to be able to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing with Tom Brady. And we're seeing the mistakes because he can't do some of the things that at this age that Bruce Arians wants him to do.
Yeah. I think
he's still got them competitive. It's
right.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have not made the playoffs since 2007.
Yeah.
They have the second longest active playoff drought in the NFL. And he's going to get them there. He's going to get them into the playoffs. But whether, I keep seeing people calling them, Super Bowl contender and, still maybe the best team in the NFC. I don't see that at all.
Yeah, I just think that they are trying so hard to try to make the Tampa Bay Buccaneers work. That's what it seemed like to me. It's almost like when a baby is turning his head saying that, I don't want them peas that you're trying to shove in my mouth. And yet you're still trying to get it to them, it's good for you. It's good for you. No, like this team is not, this team is like average, middle of the pack type football team, but it's like they're trying to make this team better. And also, Mark, I just feel like, okay, Jameis Winston, you go back to Florida State days. He's always had an issue with turning the ball over. This isn't anything new, but I just feel like with Bruce Arians as your coach, if you had some issues, it's going to double, right? So I think the most interceptions Jameis has thrown in a season is about 15. So, you look at it, it doubled. And to me, I think it has a lot to do with Arians' system. But I also believe that a lot of people don't pay attention to this stuff. I think coordinators and schemes matter, like you said. Like, people are talking about, man, what's wrong with Carson Wentz? What's wrong with Carson? They paid him all this money. I'll tell you what's wrong with him. It's Frank Wright. Frank Wright was his offensive coordinator. When Frank Wright left, and and now he's the head coach of the Colts, Carson Wentz hasn't been the same. You can say the same thing with Kirk Cousins last year. Stefanski, he's out there in Cleveland, and he struggled. You look at Kyle Shanahan going to San Francisco. Matt Ryan was the MVP. Ever since he left, he's not been the same. Schemes and coordinators matter. And I just think that, to me, this is my opinion, I just feel like Jameis is a much better quarterback than those 30 for 30. And I think it had a lot to do with Bruce Arians' system and Bruce Arians' stubbornness to not run a football, which I don't understand, which I don't have a problem with, Mark. Let him keep on doing it because it's helping us in the end. But his stubbornness is causing guys to kind of raise eyebrows at quarterbacks. And he honestly, in my humble opinion, he ruined the career of Jameis Winston. Now, Jameis Winston was a credible quarterback with a lot of promise. And now he's almost like that kid, that walks around the school and every time everybody see him, they, milk squirts out the kids' noses in laughter. So I feel like it has a lot to do with Bruce Arians. I feel like Sean Payton is hiding out Jameis. I really do. I feel like we know that Sean Payton is very, very meticulous. He pays attention to detail. So I think he really wanted Teddy. And I think their plan backfired because they didn't expect Drew to get hurt. Drew gets hurt again, and I feel like he don't want history to repeat itself. I really feel like he believes in Jameis. He sees the skill set that Jameis possesses, and he sees a future in him. And I think that the best thing for him to do is, he's putting the fine china, he putting it in a cabinet, until, to everybody come over. Then he brings out the fine china. So if you want to see Taysom, just giving Taysom an opportunity. Hey, we paid you this money. This is the money that we gave you. We promised you that we was going to give you a fair opportunity to see what you have. And now, you're not breaking any promises with Taysom. And at the same time, you're preserving a guy that can possibly be the successor to Drew Brees. That's how I feel about it.
Here's the thing that I've always believed about Jameis. Jameis has all the physical talent in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Jameis's problem has always been up here.
Yep.
It's always been mental. It's always been a maturity issue.
Right.
That's what we saw at Florida State with the crab leg incident and the incident in the cafeteria where he just started shouting profane language and got himself in trouble.
Right.
And even the off the field stuff after he got to the pros.
Right.
This is all maturity issues. And he came into the league, a young guy.
Yeah.
Basically the youngest you can be to get into the NFL. I think he was 21.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of maturing to do.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, you have guys who have been coddled a bit because of their athletic ability their entire life.
True.
Their entire life. And then the fact that Jameis's success came so easily as a freshman at Florida State, a Heisman Trophy, a national championship. Well, then that just continued to to ingrain that, he's special. He's above everybody else.
Yep.
And I think he had to grow out of that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, what you're talking about, Bruce Arians' system and his taking over in Tampa coincided with Jameis finally starting to kind of mature out of that a little bit, and growing into the game and starting to learn. And then he gets, to your point, he gets thrown into a system where he's going to make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
And so, it kind of stunted his growth a little bit for maybe a year. But I don't think Sean Payton brings him in if he doesn't see something in this kid.
Yeah.
And I call him a kid. He's like 26 now. But, I think, it was obviously going to be a deal that was going to be friendly to the Saints.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, look, if you want to better yourself, if you want to better your game, if you want to become a better quarterback, here's what we're going to pay you. And you basically get an internship to come in and learn under some of the best offensive minds the NFL has to offer and one of the best quarterbacks of all time.
Right.
And that's a deal that not many guys get a chance to even sign up for.
Right.
And so, Jameis, he's got money. He's not hurting. he's played 5 years in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I think, he could take a flyer on a year where, maybe he gets something of a minimum contract,
mm-hmm.
but he's coming in and he's learning things that are going to help him prolong his career. And whether or not that's here or not, we're going to find that out.
Yeah.
But, I think, the deal they gave Taysom is not a break the bank kind of a deal either.
True.
So they could, when this season is up, Drew Brees, if he heads off into retirement and they want to keep Jameis, they'll work out a new deal with Jameis. And they can keep Taysom here doing the same things he's always done with Drew Brees.
Mm-hmm.
They can keep running that exact same system. And, Jameis's game is going to look a little bit different from Drew's. But I think under the coaching of Sean Payton, under the coaching of Pete Carmichael, under the coaching of Joe Lombardi, if they manage to keep the entire staff intact, which is always also a little bit of an if. But under those guys and after what he's learned this season from Drew Brees, and I can't speak to exactly what he's learned, but I'm sure a lot of it is how to work, how to put the effort in, how to break down film, how to train. There's a lot of things that you can learn from a guy like Drew Brees, who's had to give 110% at every turn to make it in this league.
True.
There's a lot you can learn from a guy like that. And I think all of that is going to help Jameis, whether he's the Saints quarterback of the future or whether he moves on to somebody else.
Yeah.
And obviously he saw the value in that because he's here.
Yeah.
And, I can't fault the Saints at all for making that deal because you went and got yourself some insurance in case you have some type of catastrophe at the quarterback position.
Right.
And you didn't break the bank for it. You're paying the guy very little. And in Jameis's case, he's getting a master class, for and getting paid for it.
Yeah.
He's like, it's a minimum salary. He's still getting paid. He's not paying to be here.
True.
He's getting free college basically at the quarterback position. He's got himself a scholarship at the quarterback position. And look, the book on Jameis Winston is not finished being written.
Yeah.
We're going to see where he goes from here. And is Sean Payton stashing him was the ultimate question in this. Mm-hmm. The answer is there's a chance, because if anybody has really done well at that type of a maneuver, it's Sean Payton.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. Look at Jameis. Like I said, he has all the tools to be successful. And, even if he ends up, being the successor to Drew Brees and he throws like 14 or 15 interceptions in a season, I don't think that's too bad because I think sometimes like over the last couple of years, Drew Brees has been in single-digit interceptions. I remember when Drew Brees would throw like 11 or 12 interceptions in a season. I remember that, before, he started to get like really deep into his prime and you see an interception start to go down. He started to get like 7 and 8 interceptions per season. So I don't have an issue with that at all. And I really just feel like –
don't worry because people were mad back then too.
Yeah.
Some things never change.
Exactly. Yeah, but I'm rooting for Jameis Winston. I'm always rooting for guys who, to try to resurrect their career. And I really feel like he can be one of those guys. But, Mark, finally, I want to ask you about the playoffs scenario. So we talked about that also, about the Saints having an opportunity to clinch a playoff berth with the win over the Atlanta Falcons. But the Saints have an opportunity to also win the NFC South, and it involves a team that we don't like to mention here, who that nature very often, and that's the Minnesota Vikings. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
All right, hang with me here. This gets a little bit complicated.
Okay.
But here's why the Saints can clinch a playoff spot this weekend. First of all, you look at the NFC South, and they're essentially 2 wins away from winning the NFC South because Tampa's sitting there with 5 losses.
Right.
The best they can do is 11-5.
Right.
The Saints have 9 wins. So if they get to 11 wins, then the worst that they could do after that would be to finish 11-5. Right. And they've already beaten Tampa twice. So they've got that tiebreaker in their pocket.
Right.
So 2 wins by the Saints or 2 losses by the Bucs or a combination of 1 and 1 gets the Saints their 4th straight NFC South championship. But that's still a couple of weeks away because Bucs are on a bye week this week. So they can't get 2 of those things this week. They can't go out and get 2 wins on Sunday. So they would have to have the Bucs lose at some point, and the Bucs ain't losing this week while they're sitting at home. Exactly. So they're not going to clinch the championship in the division this weekend, but they can clinch a playoff spot because again they're at 9 wins. If they get the win over Atlanta, that gives them 10.
Right.
And if you take a look at the playoff standings, you've got you got 3 wild cards this year, so you've got 7 playoff spots.
Right.
And there's a clear delineation right there. The last playoff team right now is Arizona at 6-5.
Right.
The teams below that would still have a chance to catch the Saints are all sitting at 5-6. You got the Vikings, you got the Bears, you got the 49ers. The Saints have beaten the 49ers. Saints have beaten the Bears. So they got head-to-head tiebreakers over those 2, but they haven't played the Vikings yet.
Right.
So the Vikings are really the only team that will be able to come up and knock the Saints out of a playoff spot if the Saints were to lose all the rest of their games at this point, or even after beating Atlanta. But here's the funny thing, because Minnesota plays Tampa Bay, I think in week 14. So in that game, you're going to get one of 2 outcomes. Either they're going to beat Tampa Bay, and if you've beaten Atlanta, that loss from Tampa Bay is the other part of the equation that gives you a division championship. Boom, you're in the playoffs.
Right.
If Tampa Bay wins that game and beats Minnesota, well, now they're sitting with 7 losses. They can't get to 10 wins. So they can't knock you out of the playoffs. Yeah. So the fact that game is sitting on the schedule is what allows the Saints to clinch a playoff spot this weekend. And all they got to do is go into Atlanta and beat the Falcons, which is something that they enjoy doing anyway. So, and I'll leave you with this about the Falcons game. My coworker, Bobby Hebert, has a stat he loves to bring up, which is that when the Saints sack Matt Ryan 3 or more times, undefeated, and it's like 8 or 9-0. And to me, first of all, that tells me there's been 9 games where they've sacked Matt Ryan 3 or more times. You got to figure Matt Ryan does not like when he sees the Saints on the schedule. Yeah. But that seems to be the formula for winning. So if that defensive line gets off again this week, then they shouldn't have too much of an issue. Now that offense is explosive, and I'm not taking anything away from the Falcons because they have been playing a lot better lately than they played at the beginning of the season. Yeah. But if you just take a look at the rosters, to me the Saints are just the better team.
True.
And I think that they proved it all year long. I think that the way the defense is playing, if they shut down the Falcons on offense again, I think you can call it a wrap because the Saints are going to put up enough points on the Falcons defense to get the victory. And so that to me, once again, we're back to the same place we were last year when Teddy Bridgewater filled in. It's on the defense, and the defense can rise up and lead this team, and just like they did last year, and that's what they have been doing. And so it's, to me, I'm a defensive football guy. I love defense, and so and I don't want to watch a 6-3 game if it just means sloppy offenses. Right. But if it's 2 hard-hitting defenses and you're seeing some serious wood being laid, and you're seeing 2 teams really getting after it, to me that's entertaining. Yeah. So I don't mind us winning with defense one bit. However you got to get the victory, you go get it. And it's gonna be on the Saints defense again this week to lead the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they definitely gonna have to put on a star-studded performance. I hate to say it like this, no disrespect to the Broncos, but I do feel like it was like a second bye week for the Saints. I mean, a team not going to be throwing the football all over the place. I mean, some guys probably didn't even get touched in that game. It wouldn't surprise me. But like you said,
it's a shame they got put in that position.
Mm-hmm.
But I also understand why the NFL allowed the game to go on, because it's about personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And they're trying to tell these teams it's on you to make sure you stay safe. And I thought Vic Fangio had it exactly right when he came out and said, our quarterbacks let us down.
Right.
Because they did. All they had to do was wear a mask in the meeting, and they wouldn't have been put in that position, and they didn't. And so, that it's just an area where, I think I've seen a lot of people say, the NFL wouldn't do that to a team that was winning. It's like, I think they would, because Roger Goodell is pretty big on personal responsibility. We've seen that in every suspension he's ever handed out. Yeah. He wants guys to be accountable, and that's how you hold guys accountable, is you show them that you're not playing around.
Yeah, I mean, I had the same feeling. I even tweeted that. I said I felt like if it was a certain team, or if they had like a certain player, I think they would have gave them a little bit of leeway. But I mean, that was before I actually knew exactly what was going on. I mean, I had a really hot take right after the game about it, but that was before I knew all the things that came into fruition, how things were apparent, that it was based on them not showing any type of responsibility and not social distancing and not wearing a mask. So, I mean, as a fan, I feel bad for the fans, but as an organization, I mean, you have to take that L, and the Saints, they got that victory, and that's very, very important. A win is a win, regardless how you want to look at it or not. I mean, the Saints right now have the best record in the NFC, and they're moving forward.
They don't go back after the season and say, well, they did beat a team without a quarterback. No, they look at the victories and the victories in the win column. And look, let me just say real quick, hats off to Kendall Hinton, man, because that kid came in a really tough situation. And, I think he did as best as could be expected of a guy that, gets a call on Friday and is told, hey, you're going to play quarterback for the first time in 4 or 5 years. And it's going to be against the New Orleans Saints defense, who's the number one defense in the NFL right now. So Kendall Hinton, great job, man, filling in and doing what you had to do. And this does not reflect poorly on him at all. No. He was a trooper out there.
Yeah, I mean, can you just imagine what was going through his mind? I mean, and like you said at the beginning of the podcast, I mean, Cam Jordan was in his face every single time. I seen like one play where I think Marcus Davenport got a pressure on him, and it was almost like he lifted this guy up like as if he was a little child. Like he got him right underneath the shoulder pads and launched him back. It was almost like, how they have those movies where they probably have that geeky guy who probably get in a game some reason, and you just see him flying all over the field because the big guys just that's what it reminded me of. I mean,
he looked like he's built like a receiver.
Exactly.
Like he looked like a receiver playing quarterback. He definitely wasn't Ben Roethlisberger or Cam Newton out there. And I mean, there was certainly one play where he launched the ball, and I think it was the interception to Gardner Johnson. Right. He just got waylaid as soon as he let go of the ball. Yeah. And I mean, he took his licks in that game. And Cam Jordan came out on Twitter after, and Demario Davis came out on Twitter after and gave the kid his props. And it's a situation that I don't think any of us would ever want to be put in, to be thrust into that. But he made the most of it.
Yeah, it was the first, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be the last, Mark. I'm pretty sure teams are going to,
unless something else happens this season, it's going to be the last time. And I think enough teams saw that where they learned their lesson. It's like, look,
exactly,
we need to make sure that we have our ducks in a row. And before the season, I want to say it's the New York Jets, but somebody is paying Josh McCown a $12,000 paycheck per week to sit at home in Texas and just quarantine himself. Because if they need an emergency quarterback, they're going to call him and he's going to fly out. And I'm pretty sure it's the New York Jets that are paying him. But it's like, I don't know why every team's not doing that. I know the Saints have Trevor Siemian stashed away just in case. So I think teams are going to, I don't know if there's enough quarterbacks for everybody to do it, but everybody that can do it is going to be, probably looking into that this week.
Yeah, definitely going to have some bubble wrap quarterbacks going around. But, I mean, I was going to make a joke about the Jets, but at this point, it's just low-hanging fruit. Mark, thank you so much.
They might not win a game this year.
It would not surprise me at all. I mean, that's some terrible football. I mean, I feel bad for the state of New York as a whole.
Before we get out of here, if you didn't see this coming when Adam Gase got introduced to that press conference and was looking all around with his eyes popped like he was on LSD, if you didn't see this coming in that moment, when he spent 30 minutes basically looking like he was high and kicking balls, if you didn't see this coming, I'm sorry. But this went about as well as I expected it to go for the Jets, and I can't imagine Adam Gase is going to be still the coach of the team next year.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's been here that long. I mean, him and Matt Patricia, I'm just shocked how they just kept their job. I mean, they finally got rid of Matt Patricia, but I'm just shocked that it took them that long. But Mark
and Bill O'Brien was obviously the first casualty of the season, and that was well deserved when you watch what DeAndre Hopkins is doing in Arizona and you see what he let that guy go for.
My goodness, I really don't understand. That was another guy. I mean, you look at like them in the playoffs and just look at how they just constantly like lost and how he just bad decision making all in all. And then I was when they were in the playoffs, when they were in the wild card game against Buffalo, I was saying that they need to get rid of him then. I think the fan base, like the Houston Texan fan base, were even calling for this guy job. I don't
know what about his coaching career ever made them decide we need to make this guy the GM also. I don't understand any of that.
Thank you.
But what I said earlier about Drew Brees, same thing goes for Sean Payton. Saints fans, appreciate Sean Payton while you got him, because he automatically puts you in a position where you're, in the top half of the league. And the same goes for Mickey Loomis and the entire front office staff that they have. They've set this team up for success more often than not during Sean Payton's tenure. And, if Sean manages to get that second Super Bowl, I think he's a Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah.
And so appreciate Sean Payton while he's here, because you can look around the league and every year there's 6 to 8 guys that are looking for jobs because they didn't make it happen where they were at. Right. And the Saints have not been in that position since 2006.
Yeah.
14 years, it'll be 15 years now this season since we've had to go hire another coach.
Yeah.
And so that's an amazing run, and that's a really nice position to be in.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, you see this coaching carousel happens every year. The Saints have had stability in his organization for 15 years. Shouts out to Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton. I'm a little nervous that we're going to lose the secret weapon in that front office, which is Jeff Ireland, in my opinion. I'm afraid that we might end up losing him for him to end up being somebody GM. That's the only issue I have, as far as with the personnel and the front office. But they do an outstanding job finding guys that are good system guys. I mean, we see this over and over again. Guys end up getting hurt. You see guys come in and the offense and the defense doesn't miss a beat. But Mark, thank you so much for being a part of the State of the Saints podcast. And before you go, just let everybody know how they can get in touch with you, on social media and also on WWL.
I'm on Twitter at Mark Menard 13. That's MarkMenard13 at Mark Menard 13. And I'm on, every afternoon I'm part of the sports talk show on WWL Radio. And right now it's also, I've got the honor and the privilege of filling in on the post-game show after Saints games. So if you're listening online at radio.com, or if you're listening on the air to the Saints game at 870 AM or 105.3 FM or any of the Saints affiliates down the line, you can hear me after the game on the Toyota Locker Room Show, and you can hear me after the game with Bobby Hebert on the Point After. So I'll be doing that another couple of weeks, I think, and it's been great fun doing it so far, and having a great time. And like I said, sports talk every afternoon on WWL from starting at 4, and then we kind of end at a different time every night, depending on if there's a football game or a coach's show or something. But as long as you tune in at 4:00, you'll find us, and we'll take you until they tell us to get off the air.
We definitely enjoy you, on WWL. Bobby Hebert, we always enjoy his take. And so many of the others, Zach Streve, Deuce McAllister. I mean, you guys do an outstanding job there. And we're looking forward to hearing from you in the future, Mark. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thanks for having me. This has been a great time. Appreciate it. Absolutely. Take care. You too.